Well, hello. Again, my name is Crystal. I am a Los Angeles-based experiential media designer and a yoga movement teacher, and I specialize in audiovisual immersive installations and meditative experiences. So, can everyone hear me? I studied experiential animation at CalArts, and I got a master's in animation and digital arts in USC. And so I studied animation for a very long time, but I always more interested in creating moving paintings and experiences more than narrative stories or traditional cartoons. And I think that also stems from my background. I came from a drawing and painting background. And as a kid, I was very interested in imagination of going into my closet and turning off the lights and pretending that I'm in a portal to Narnia and everything. Time all stops down. And I have a little bit of a break from reality. And that, I believe, is what stemmed into my desire to be an experiential media designer. So following Narnia, as I continue to ask questions and using art form to answer and feed these curiosity, I want to create these kind of environments where you feel like time has stopped and you have a snippet of release from the real world and can connect closer to oneself. On the right are two projects that I had done in the past. Root was a project I was able to exhibit last year before lockdown, but it had 3 different plants and soil where the audience can touch the soil and touch the plants, and the animation on the pot would change. And also there was sound design and the audio music change as the audience touched the plant. And it was interesting because I had this, it was supposed to be exhibited for 4 months. So, and it was indoors, so I had dark lights for this show, but then lockdown happened and I ended up not being able to get the plants for a lot longer. But by the time I got it, it grew crazily. The dark light really worked, and it was before it grew this flower really tall. So I felt it was nice to see that it thrived and had people to experience it before full lockdown at the time. And on the bottom is a project I did in the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. And it had interaction with a Kinect sensor, and it had 6 different looks. And it was exciting to see people to play and engage in seeing their silhouette and their body to animate and interact. So as I mentioned before, I am also a yoga teacher, and I think that's also where I stem from, finding this inner self, and which led me to my meditation practice, and my yoga practice. And I feel like it's, for my own work process, it's nice to go inside and then using my art practice to express what I find. And TouchDesigner was such a great tool for that, because when I just worked in animation, it was a lot of keyframing, which felt so structured, but the ability to be using generative tools and using data or noise to create the visuals seemed more organic and flow like a stream of consciousness, and be able to show what is the invisible to be unseen, and to also interact with the unseen. On the left were 2 projects. Actually, the first one, the GIF, was a project I did. It was an experimental project I did beginning of COVID, when it felt so abstract seeing the numbers of cases. And so I used Johns Hopkins API to get the live, the up-to-date cases and deaths, and got some countries and create this visual to update with the API every hour and be able to navigate it to really understand the scope and of the pandemic. And on the bottom was a commercial project I did. I worked with VT Pro in LA to use this energy company to see their water and wind and solar power energy and how much it affects over time. So using interactivity, I find it, when I think creating a piece, I think of the people as part of the piece, and also how you're choreographing the movement through. How is their arm moving? Is their body moving? And it's almost, without the user, there isn't a piece, that it is dependent on both aspects. So often questions asked, like, what is interactivity? How do you use the user's movement? How can it be part of the piece? The first image on top, Hush, was actually my thesis project in grad school, where I had a performance from a dancer, and having the dancer constantly changing the visuals live. And I wanted to give the freedom for the dancer that every time she does a show, he can have it more, he can change it up, be organic, have that freedom. But when there wasn't a dancer, the audience can come and touch it. And most of my piece, I try to have them be able to be touchable. I don't like to be too precious where people have to be behind the line, but feel like they can be curious and see what happens playing with it. And on the bottom was another project I worked with BT Pro to do a sculpture installation in DoorDash, the food delivery company in San Francisco. And they had a Connect sensor, and also using their data to visualize the different orders over time, food orders they have over time. So oftentimes I feel like we're getting stuck on what type of technology to use. Before Bileam, we were saying like, oh, we want to learn Unreal, or we want to learn GLSL, and we want to learn Python, but always trying to remember that what is the most important is what we want to say in the story, and not get stuck in the tech. And I'm guilty about this myself, because I feel as my career is going, I'm becoming more into the creative technology person. And when someone tells me an idea, I'm like, well, that's not going to work because of the sensors and all that. And I have to kind of go back to think big, and then from there, see what we need to do to make this possible. The first, as I talked about my past project, Hush. So that project was a project based on the Tibet Book of Death. It had 4 chapters, the infection, reality, confrontation, and death. And that was a piece kind of also I use as investigation when my family and myself was going through health problems and trying to understand and about the fragileness of the human experience. And on the bottom, Zest was another project. Actually, I performed in it. So that was my silhouette, that about healing and self-healing. And at the time, I was taking Tai Chi classes with my mom and used Tai Chi movements to perform in the piece. So a lot of this idea of consciousness and healing and life itself is a common thread in my projects. Even so, I said, don't get stuck in the tech. I do want to share you this really useful tool I've found a few years ago. It's called Connect Studio 2, and it only works in, unfortunately, only works for PC, unless you download Windows Boot Camp, and it only works for Connect 2. So the new Connect doesn't work, unfortunately, but whenever, oops, let me open this up. So this tool, if you ever, people working with Connect, this is a great tool where you can record your Connect data. And what's different from using this tool than just doing a movie file out of your Connect is that it also can get your chop data in. So I'll show you an example. I'll just select this file. So you can record. I currently don't have a Connect connected, but these are past recordings. They're this XEF file. And if I connect it, hold on, share my color data. I connect it and I play. I can see this recording I did before. And then if I open, and in this Connect Studio, I can also have different options of playback. Right now it is in depth mode, but also I can choose color, where then and also can have 3D playback to get point cloud mode. Let me choose another file. Sorry about that. You can see me running through my living room like a mad woman. But also you can see my joints, but it's cool. I can see this in this app, but then if I also open TouchDesigner, can it? Sorry, I'm working on my laptop right now. But if you open up TouchDesigner, it can read the Connect data as if you have the Connect connected directly into TouchDesigner. And also all the Connect chop data is there. So it's really great for if you have clients and you want to play test or demo to show them what is a point cloud. And it's great also when you're traveling that you don't have a sensor, that you can still test things, and you also don't have to constantly get up, go over the sensor, move around, and make sure it's all there. So if you haven't played around with this app, it's free, and I highly recommend Connect Studio version 2 working with TouchDesigner if you're doing interactivity. And thank you.
So what I'm going to be talking about today is audio visual interactivity with TouchDesigner and LeapMotion. LeapMotion, by the way, is this small device that you can buy for about less than $100, which basically can detect and follow your hand movements and finger movements. And it's fairly cheap for what it can do, and there's native support for this in TouchDesigner so that you can immediately start getting chop data from the device. And what I'm trying to build specifically is, oops, let me go back. Damn. Okay, so what I'm trying to build specifically is like a device or an instrument that, if you can imagine this invisible wall in front of you, when your hand starts to cross the boundary of the wall, some sound is activated and also some visual effect is activated at the same time. So it kind of feels like the user is kind of touching the surface, and they're kind of controlling both the sound and the visuals simultaneously. I guess one of the ideas I had when I originally started making this was like the movie, if you ever seen the movie Stargate, where like they start crossing like this boundary of this gate that takes them to another place. The moment they touch that boundary, there's like these water ripples that are created on the surface, and that's sort of something similar to what I wanted to emulate in terms of the visual effect. And also, there are different forms that this instrument can take. So far I've made 2 versions of it. So these are like 2 small prototypes, but potentially there can be different forms of interacting with it and different sounds or different visual effects that are used. And right now I'm using, like I said, LeapMotion, but I'm open to exploring different options to see if there's things that can provide maybe more accurate responses, or yeah, just different types of inputs, not just hands, not just hand motions. So I'm gonna just show you, if you haven't seen this, just 2 just little segments. Oops, I'm just gonna show from my computer actually. 2 videos that kind of demonstrate this idea. I won't play the full thing, but just like maybe a few seconds so you can see it. So the one on the left is kind of like this pad interface where when I touch the surface, it starts playing a note for each finger, and it sustains that note until I move my hand away from the surface. So let me just play it real quick. So that's what I call the pad interface, because it's like you're playing like this synth pad with your fingers. And the one on the right, this is more of an arpeggiator type interface. And the way it works is after you cross the boundary, TouchDesigner will draw a sort of like this, these lines that connect all your fingers, and then a little circle will travel the path of that line. And every time the circle touches one of your fingers, it plays a note. So in effect, each of your fingers is kind of like a step in a arpeggiator step sequencer. And so when I'll just play it real quick so you can see what I mean. So yeah, hopefully you could get a chance to understand what I mean about the whole audiovisual instrument idea. I know it probably doesn't come across super well over Zoom, but after this, I'm going to share links to the videos so you can watch them on your own computer. So yeah, let me go back to the presentation. So here's a kind of high-level overview of how this project works. So basically, we have 2 inputs. We have the LeapMotion inputs and the live video inputs. And from the LeapMotion inputs, we basically construct a hand geometry and apply a visual effect to that, and then join that hand geometry and the visual effect with the live video. And that during that joining of the 2 things, there's a displacement top that causes that kind of ripple water effect that I'll show in a bit. And then as far as the sound, that LeapMotion data also goes into this kind of audio controller component, then sends OSC or MIDI out to some audio program. For the first one I showed you, I'm using Super Collider, but for the second one, I'm using Ableton. So this is another area that I'm thinking about kind of iterating and exploring different options to see which one is better. And these are the concepts I'm going to be exploring. So this concept of a LeapMotion illusion, so making it seem like your hand is aligned with whatever top or texture you're working with. Scaling of input data, how to draw geometry dynamically with Python. Yeah, using this custom GLSL shader for the water effect. Feedback, in general, there's some feedback effects going on. using custom components and communication with audio programs using MIDI out and OSC. Obviously, I won't have time to go super in depth into all of these, but I'm just going to kind of touch on all of them as much as I can. And yeah, I'll touch on this slide. Yeah, I'll touch on the slide at the end after the TouchDesigner part. So let me jump straight into TouchDesigner. And so what I'm showing you right now is this. This is the first example, the pad interface. And on the left side, we have our two inputs. So on the top, we have the LeapMotion input. And this is, I created a custom component that kind of encapsulates all of that. And by the way, there's a really good tutorial that I kind of followed to get this LeapMotion illusion thing working, and I'll link to that in the presentation. But the basic idea of this component is to take the LeapMotion data, which kind of comes in as this chop with many, many channels. One moment, let me mute this. So the LeapMotion data comes in with channels for each of the fingers, for each of the hands. I think there's even an elbow data element. And what I wanted to do, or what I need to do, is basically convert those channels which into one channel per type of data. So in other words, one channel for the X coordinates, one channel for the Y coordinates, one channel for the Z coordinates, etc. And then each sample in those channels corresponds to a different finger. So to do that, I use this shuffle chop, which when you use this mode of sequence all samples every nth channel, and when I use the number 5, that means that I have 5 channels per finger, and then it basically kind of takes all 50 channels which come in here and converts them into these 5 channels, in which each channel has 10 samples. And like I said, each sample corresponds to a finger. So if I put my left hand up, we see on the left, we see the data for the left hand. So we see the X, Y coordinate, whether the LeapMotion is tracking it, and whether the finger is extended or not. And same with my right hand. Now I take this data, and one important step that I found very useful was to normalize the data that's coming in into a coordinate system that is from -1 to +1. And the reason that's useful is because it makes it easier later down the line when I'm in the visual effect or in the audio effect to deal with the data without having to know exactly what scale system the LeapMotion is in. So yeah, that's what this section is doing, basically normalizing to that -1 to +1. Then I merge all that and then I output it. So at the end of that, we have our LeapMotion data in a normalized scaling system. Then another input is the live video input, and that's pretty basic, but the kind of a useful pattern that I found was to use different types of video inputs and then switch to the one that I want to use at the time. And the reason for this is because when I'm kind of doing my normal development, I'm working on my MacBook, so I'm using the Mac webcam. But when I'm actually filming myself to make the final produced video, I'm actually using my iPhone. And so that's a different type of input. In that case, I'm using this OBS virtual cam. And so by using this kind of switch statement, it allows me to change the inputs without kind of rewiring a bunch of things. And it makes it really simple to do that. So that's our live video input. And the next part is this SOP top hands component. And what this is doing is basically taking the LeapMotion data and creating these circles on the tips of the fingers, if you can see that. And so I'm going to go into that. The top section here is basically moving the LeapMotion data such that the fingers align better with the background, with the position of my fingers on the camera feed. So the reason that has to be done is because the LeapMotion coordinate system, it doesn't know anything about where your camera is in relation to the LeapMotion. So it won't necessarily be aligned. And that's why it needs to be adjusted. And so let's see. So that the chops here in this section are basically taking some parameters that this component has and translating or scaling the X, Y, and Z coordinates so that they better align with the fingertips. And that's kind of like the whole idea of the LeapMotion illusions effect. Like I said, it came from this tutorial that I saw from MIR Works. The next thing was, in addition to the XYZ data, I need an alpha channel so that when my fingers are not extended or when they're not crossing that boundary, that these fingertips are not visible. And so what I'm basically doing there is I'm taking the Z coordinate, which is selected here, and I'm doing some math on that and multiplying it times the extended channel, which is a 1 when it's extended and a 0 when it's not extended. So that means that the output of this will be an alpha channel that is 0 when the finger is not extended, and it will be some other value when the finger is extended and past the boundary that I have here. It's a little bit hard to see, but I think you can kind of get the idea of the fingers there, of the fingertips. Now, the output of that basically becomes this instance chop, or this out chop, that is used by geometry down here using instancing. So hold on, my computer froze. There we go. So this geometry object basically takes that chop data, I assign it to each of the different properties. So translate X, Y, and Z. And also under this tab, I have the alpha channel. And the input to that geometry is basically a circle, which, yeah, it's just a circle. And with a very simple and constant material. So it's just a white circle that gets reproduced for each channel in that instance chop above. So in other words, for each finger, you get a separate circle at a different position. And that's how you get this kind of effect. What else? I applied a little bit of blur to kind of soften the edges of the fingertips, sorry. And that makes a difference later in the pipeline when this gets applied to the water ripples. Okay, so I think I'm gonna jump out of this part here into the next section, which is let's see, where do we go next? Let's stay in the visual. So I'm gonna go to this water surface effect. And so this is actually an idea I found from Extas. He makes tutorials on YouTube on TouchDesigner, and he adapted a GLSL shader that he found on ShaderToy so that it works into TouchDesigner to create this water ripples effect. So that actually happens inside this subcomponent. And I'm not actually super good at GLSL, so I won't be able to explain this part. But from what I understand, it's basically taking, it's applying a feedback effect and then taking the surrounding pixels around every pixel and then kind of creating this ripple effect. I know I'm not explaining it well, but if you're a GLSL expert, you probably would get this better than me. And I will share this in the presentation as well so that you can use it. And basically, yeah, one of the inputs to this component is what disrupts the water. So it's in this case, it's going to be the fingers, fingertips, and then also what else? Yeah, what's behind that? What's being disrupted basically is behind the water. And so, yeah, this effect, one thing I found useful in this situation was before I really got the LeapMotion data working, is I basically just tested it out with my mouse. So I also have a switch operator here that I can go down to 0, and now I'm using my mouse to do the water ripples instead of the LeapMotion data. Now I'm going to switch it back to 1. Yeah, so that's kind of like this water effect. And as you can see, at this point, you can't really see it that well. And that's because it's basically not, the effect itself is not meant to be visible, but it's meant to be used as a displacement effect in another operator later down the pipeline. And I'll show you where that's used. So that's actually right here. So the display stop, as you guys have probably used it, it takes the one input, which is a texture, and then a second input, which is the displaced image. And that's, in this case, it's the water ripples. So when I, maybe I broke something. Let me see. Let's see if maybe I forgot to put something back. Okay, so that part broke, but I'll just keep going. So anyways, the water ripple effect is basically, will be displacing the background image here. Now I'm going to talk about the audio. I think I have about a few minutes left. So the audio component is basically taking in the LeapMotion data that I talked about before, and I'm adding an additional channel, which I call speed. And that's basically just detecting how fast I'm moving my hands. So if I move it very fast, okay, yeah, you can see a graph here. If I move my hands very fast, that number goes up. And if I keep them still, the number goes down. And so I joined that channel with the XYZ data. And I also add this touch channel, which is computed in the component that I talked about earlier, the one that has the geometry. And this channel is going to be used in some logic up here to determine whether to play a note or whether to stop the note. So after the channels are merged, I use a chop execute, which is basically a operator that lets you write some custom Python code. And inside this program, I basically have an object for each finger that I'm tracking. And whenever the chop data changes, I update each of those finger objects or the corresponding finger object. And I have some logic that determines when the finger goes above a certain threshold, and that basically represents that invisible wall that I talked about. Then it plays a note for that finger. And when it goes the other way, then it stops. And any other change to the chop data then becomes an update event. And each of those events are basically OSC messages. So those are here basically. These are basically OSC messages that get sent from TouchDesigner into Super Collider. And I won't go super deep into Super Collider, but the idea is basically you have some code there that receives those messages and then does the corresponding action. So for the play action, it will play a synth and it will remember that synth for later. During update, it updates that synth that it has in memory. And during stop, it basically releases the synth and it sets the gate to 0 so that it can ring out and be released. I think I have 5 minutes left, roughly, maybe. So this is pretty much all on the pad interface. So I'll just real quick talk about the other project, the other version of this, which is that arpeggiator. That one's actually a little more complicated, and let's see. I probably won't be able to go into detail as much, but the pattern is very similar. So I still have the 2 inputs of LeapMotion of the live video input. I still combine those to create this geometry, and I still kind of send the LeapMotion data to the audio controller to send the OSC, or in that case, MIDI, to the audio program, which I'm using Ableton. Let's see if this starts. If it doesn't start, then we might just, I might just show it later. Okay, here we go. So like I said, it's very similar. So I'll just show the parts that are different. And the parts that are different are I'll skip this part. Okay, sorry, this is what's different. So inside here, let me see. Oh yeah, it's inside here actually. This component is basically what's drawing one moment. Where am I? I'm looking for the arpeggiator circle that moves across. One moment. Okay, damn it, I'm in the wrong operator. It's this one. Okay. Yeah, so like I said, I don't have time to go into so much detail, but what's basically happening is I take the LeapMotion data, I run it through a few custom like execute chops to basically populate a table with all the points, and another operator basically iterates over the elements in the table, and it then does some math to determine at any given point where that cursor needs to be. And there's an LFO that's kind of like feeding the loop, and the custom Python logic is basically determining the position of the cursor, which then gets outputted into a operator that becomes an instance to a geometry down below. And so that's kind of like how the circle moves around. And then another part that's interesting is the lines that are connected, that connect the fingers. That's using a script SOP, and it's basically iterating over those points in the table that I talked about before, and it just draws a polygon with those points, and it connects the points to create this kind of path that you see here. And yeah, I think I'm kind of running out of time. So the final part of this is in the audio component, I detect when the cursor touches the finger, each fingertip. And at that moment, I send a MIDI message to Ableton. So I'm gonna pause this and just close out the presentation. So what's next for the project? Basically, I wanna create more iterations on different effects, different sounds, different modes. I wanna try different ways of detecting hand motions, because the LeapMotion is great, but there are times where it's not as precise as I want it to be. So I want to try maybe using the camera feed as an input, or as a way to detect the position of the hands. Another opportunity would be to make this somehow multiplayer. So whether it's more than one person in the same room, or maybe even people across the internet in different places, kind of like playing with each other. And another thing I want to try is doing feedback loops. So somehow having the visuals feedback into the sound, and vice versa, to kind of create some kind of interesting effects that way. Okay, so I think that's all for my presentation. Thank you everybody for watching.
Wow, thanks so much. That was an amazing presentation, really. Like, I was already super impressed before, but I'm like way more impressed now. And it's a lot more complex than I imagined, actually. So congrats on that. That's really cool. How long have you been working with TouchDesigner, actually?
I started around April. So,
oh wow. But you've been diving into like you've been working with like programming for some time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't talk about this, but yeah, I come from a software engineering background, so I've been programming for like more than 10 years, but more for like backend and front end.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to hear though, because that's such a short time. And like your art network was also like very structured, which I totally didn't do in the beginning. So well done on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I also thought like there's these gloves and like full body suits and stuff that could be interesting to like step in and make that react to sound. And yeah, I also really want to dive more into TD Ableton still, and especially with like also with the Kinect. So that's really inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm a bit stressed because it's like so long I wanted to do this. I started to, can you see my screen? Can you see me? And can you hear me, right?
Yeah, all good.
All good. I have my 3, 4 cameras. So I'm gonna go through a lot of different, no, a selection of different example. I just need to show you also what we have for later. So like some stuff here, some sensors and some Kinect and Zcam and so on. So I just try to be quick and in the presentation so that we can jump to the start. Okay, so I'm Nima Gazestani. Hello, I am, the presentation link. Sorry, I'm gonna share you if you want the presentation link in the chat so that you have it for later. Um, my name is Nima. I'm 30 years old. I was born in Italy and raised there, but my parents are Iranian, Iran, doo-doo-doo, Iran, doo-doo-doo. So I love cooking, obviously, and touch designer. I love cooking Iranian and Italian and obviously touch designer. I have started from here, from NABA. NABA is a school of design in Milan, an academy of beauty arts. And I was surrounded by professors. It was amazing. I obviously started with Arduino, as many of interaction designers starts with Arduino, this mounting stuff and mounting back, like this is a radio transformed in a lamp. These were a bit my professor. I really loved them and I worked with them for 5 to 7 years because then I became the assistant and then the course leader of the master. So I really like dive into all these people, particularly Massimo Banzi, who was very available at that time, 2010 and 11. Now he's a bit like a politician of open hardware. So now it's unreachable. No, he's actually in Supsi in Switzerland. And all the others from is a Dynabolic operating system on Linux. It's an operating system with all open source software inside. And he also did the Ashicam software, one of the first Ashicam software. And then Patrick Tresset, the guy who creates those robot arms with a webcam. He's in London based and all the other amazing people. And obviously here he is, Andrew Quinn. Andrew Quinn has been my mentor and he introduced me to TouchDesigner in 2008. He actually like presented to me saying, okay, I have done different movies like Matrix 1. And I was like, what? Matrix 1? You did Matrix 1? And I watched Matrix 1 like at least 20 times. So I become his disciple or slave or whatever you want to call it for a few years. And then I started, to do interactive installation. This is my first collaboration with Aurora Mechanica. I hope you can hear the sound because I probably didn't share the sound. Have I?
We do, it's all good.
You do, okay. So this is an installation that I was using a webcam from above, motion tracking, and the visual. This is a collaboration with Aurora Mechanica. Fabio Alvino was one of my students. Now he's based in Barcelona, but it's okay. Now this is like a shadow of the glass, no, that represents the time. And the fun fact is that that's actually a very simple cylinder wireframe with noise with the light that passed through. And we observed that doing this trick, it was looking like the refraction of the glass. No? So but it's basically a cylinder with the wireframe and a fixed noise and the spotlight passing through. No, so and it makes that kind of shadow. Very nice. And then the most interesting part of this project was not the effect. Okay, the effect it was nice, but the concept itself was pretty awesome. At the time, I don't know if you remember, but the deputy of the Democratic Party of Japan, Yasuhiro Sonoda, he drank a glass of water taken from the reactor 3 and 5 and 6 of Fukushima, and he drank it in front of a lot of journalists, international journalists that were there just to shoot this, immortalize this scenic act. And it was really a performance, So it also ended with a lot of empty glasses raised in the air, and so we tried to represent this with this installation, drinking glass of water that reflects a bit this gesture, this mystification of the gesture that that had really no meaning at that time. Like after the disaster, they were just drinking from. Okay, so I'm just trying to go a little bit faster. This is a video I posted on my social media because I love the reaction that this Grammy had. I was really looking into some reaction like that because she's the Grammy of the girl there. So this was the first time she was trying it, and no smile, no cry. She was just thinking about what the heck was happening. This is another installation that uses a little bit the same technique. 2010, 2009, it was all about computer vision. So we had a lot of open source software for motion tracking. And this was using like a camera from above, and then the light bulb that was inside the sphere was basically the joystick. We were using like Community Core Vision or Tuyo open source platform. We were using also IceWeb, that was a sort of software made in Genova that was open source. And this is a bit of the video installation. It's pretty nice. Actually, this installation was made by 10 of us. Everybody was taking care of different part. It was called Hyperwish. And it's like a gigantic machine that basically gets wishes, desires from people, and then it transforms them in some sort of word cloud. It goes online to search semantic words. And this is like the input station made by Michiel Veldkamp from Rotterdam, who actually works with some of the TDers from Rotterdam. And the central screen was the TouchDesigner screen. The one on the right was the processing screen that was showing this generated hyperwish using all the unique words, putting together, creating a nonsense phrase. And then the central part, the one with the tunnel that you're gonna see here. This is Andrew making. So going forward and backward with the ball, with the camera from above. This was basically a torus. So a torus with a camera inside. The camera was rotating on the Z-axis and the torus was rotating on the Y-axis. So you were looking like always to go in the tunnel, but always in a different direction. And inside you had this semantic word, were like the unique word in the satellite. And then the satellite words were like coming from this semantic web that was based in San Diego, because at the time semantic web search engine were very rare to find, and we were using, I remember this. Let's go on because I'm pretty have to go faster. How much time I have? Did I start the timer? Yes.
No stress, no stress.
Netflix. So this is one of the first brand. I wanted to show you also a bit of before student stuff. This is Netflix, the launch of the season 2 of Stranger Things. So Stranger Things is this thing with the bicycles and the kids. So we created together with you, the agency, and Soul Designer Hybrid Studio, which is now moved in Switzerland, and it's called Amygdala. We created these 4 bicycles, 4 cinemas, all in the same hall, no? And each bicycle with an odometer controlled with Arduino was actually like, if you wanted to watch the movie, you had to pedal, or else it was glitching and then turning to black. So it was a race. It was a race with 4 teams, like Young Squad, Monster Hunters, Team 11, blah, blah, blah. There were 2 odometer for each bicycle, one for the backup in case the first one it breaks, because people were actually jumping on the bikes because they took it really as a contest, not to watch the thing. There was the high score, so they really took it like a race, and it's 12 hours, like from the afternoon to the evening late. It's like the whole season, all the episode one after the other. So the audio was shared, and the cinema were just 4 different cinemas. So I had, then the top were splitted. And this is the Arduino receiving all the signals. You can't see nothing because obviously this is a very horrible video made with my phone at the time. The thing I loved, it was the tabellone, the high score thing, because I really took care about the way that was like the 2 teams were disappearing and then they were reappearing in the correct order. That was like a finesse I really loved. It was really fun. And then obviously these kind of things are much bigger. No, this is like another project we have done with Dude Agency, always for Netflix, Black Mirror. You can find the link here, but I'm just gonna jump into what I actually did for this project, which it was this kind of 360 point cloud by using TreeKinect. This was the rehearsal in another stage. Wait, I'm sorry. Stop it, this is unmuted, this is muted. So you have TreeKinect, you have two clients with TouchDesigner commercial player, packing or unpacking top and sending it to the server. And then basically you have the 3 slices of point cloud and you manually try to set up. I was using a tennis ball on a tripod, putting in the center, and then trying with not with the hand, but with the software to move the geometries in order to fit the 3-point clouds. And it was actually working very well. And MB Labs was asking me, did you do it automatically or you did it manually? No, I did it manually. And he was, yes, me too. Okay, cool. And then this was another way of using always computer vision camera from above, but this time there was a strip of LED. And when you were putting your hand on the strip of LED, there was a blob appearing in the Community Core Vision software. So you could use this thing reverse, you know. So this was one of the first official exhibition I have done in 2011. I was still like an assistant. So it was like for me going to Rome and doing this thing, it was crazy, amazing. And it was this, I think it's 088, or I don't remember this in interface of the parameter, I don't remember. Basically, you put your hand, there is a character appearing in front of you, and then you move left or right, and he follows you, no? But he with his own speed. This was debugging. This was moving with the speed of the hand. I was actually developing it inside the museum, like all the, you know, not even the debugging part, like the details part of the thing, like add this, add that. They also made me add, like when 2 characters encounter themselves, a bubble appears between them. So this was really nice. At the end, I had a good result, and it was and there was also the president of the Republic at that time, Giorgio Napolitano. If there are some Italians, they can recognize him for this. I sent it to my mom. She was very, very happy. Then Toyota LeapMotion. This is the first time I started to introduce Python inside TouchDesigner because the client asked me, please, we want an email with the GIF attached to it. So I went, I didn't know Python before. I went, I searched for SMTP library Python, and it was just bam. Like, okay, not bam, 3 days of full understanding. Then I had another guy was HTML a little bit, and so the email was arriving with a nice format HTML, but all inside TouchDesigner with the attachment. Obviously, TouchDesigner cannot create GIF with the movie file out, but you don't actually need GIF because the GIF are actually fake MP4. So we just needed an MP4 that was looking like a GIF. I'm not showing you this. This is another interactive immersive experience that I've recently updated. Thanks, Nadine, for the licensing issues. And this is just controlled by 4 different iPad, web-based page control, Node.js, sending OSC stuff. And so you click here, the documentary starts there. There are 75 videos, all converted in HapQ, and it's running 60 FPS, 9 projector, 1 RTX 2080 Ti, 1 RTX 2080 Ti, and a second one that is like hiding below. I made them both too, so that I have a second one in case the first one goes like, you know, wrong. I go faster. So this is 11 minutes. This is a workshop I've done with the students of YED. It was focused about interactive storytelling. It was not focused about TouchDesigner, but we used TouchDesigner in order to make it happen. And this was then showed in the Triennale Museum, blah, blah, blah. This is a semisphere of polystyrol, And the interactive storytelling is basically this alien that tells you, oh, I broke my spaceship here on the moon and I have to rebuild it. Please help me to find different pieces. And so basically you are walking on a tapirulan and you are listening to these stories. And meanwhile, you see your little characters going around the moon and the alien is talking to you. And then you help him to rebuild his spaceship with different design pieces coming from the, iconic design, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, you have this setup, which was like, roughly made. It was not like to do something professional. The cool part was that it was the mouse wheel. It was the mouse wheel, dismounting the mouse, attaching the mouse under the carpet, and then using the scroll of the mouse to go on with the story, So Tapirulan mouse wheel. This was my first personal collaboration with an Archistar, Patricia Orchiola, for Floss. This was work made of DMX light and proximity sensors. So it was the installation for the 100 years of this designer, Achille Castiglioni, that you might remember him for this piece of design probably, but he also did a lot of design for Floss, lamps and so on. And one of the most famous was the Parentesi. So this was the room sponsored by Floss, 100 parentheses. And I don't know if to jump maybe just at the middle of the video where she explains. I don't want to make it this presentation too long. So you have different sound starting. I'm gonna just...
Saranno quindi il verso di una civetta, il rumore di un'accensione di un interruttore o i suoni del rimbalzo di una pallina di ping pong a dare voce al gioco di luce.
And all the sound were like all the lights were sound reactive. So there was a little clip audio, and then there was incandescent light or halogen light, and they were really like super reactive. And then they were triggered by these proximity sensors that were distributed around the space. So it was like a forest of light, and you were triggering effects. So it was really immersive. It was like amazing. And they spent a lot of money buying this kind of wait, I have to go on camera 4. This JB system doesn't work. These devices, which are the JB system DSP4, that you can connect anything. Then later we're gonna see something else. Let's go on. This is really okay, so Floss then, I got in touch with the president, Mr. Piero Gandini, and so I became the supervisor of all their interactive development concept. And this was another project, but this not TouchDesigner involved. I was the supervisor. They did it in another studio, the development, because they were, 12 people working for 3 days and mounting all the... I did the concept, like the whole research. Maybe I explain it in the breakout room. This is done in VVVV, but it's actually like a capacitive sensor that triggers a video, okay? And then you have the video loop and the video once, and that's it. But it was an amazing project. Then Moleskine, I used the Leuser Rod 4. This is a great piece of technology. Obviously, it costs a lot, so you might rent it from the service video. The Leuser Rod 4 looks more or less like this big piece of, laser that they use industrially, and it's like pretty heavy. It works very well, and you just attach it via Ethernet, and you receive XY position of the blobs. And so this concept was about the white room and the black room. The white room was the Moleskine notepad room where you would draw on the Moleskine, and then they have this new Adobe Cloud system where you can draw on the notepad and have your drawing on a Dropbox folder. So automatically the drawing were going in the black room. And so you could like paint with your hand on your drawing and then get your gadget, which was the only thing you wanted when you entered this installation. Now you want the Moleskine gadget, basically. Then blah, blah, blah. This is blah, blah. This Ferrari, some interactive multi-touch screens. At the beginning, I was doing LeapMotion, but then I discovered that at least 70% of people, maybe even 80% of people, they don't know how to use LeapMotion. So even if it was like, okay, let's watch the factory from above with your hand, it was very, very difficult for them. So I drive all of them onto trivia quiz, which I'm a pretty fan of trivia quiz. I also posted a fruit quiz on derivative community, and I'm gonna post this probably very soon because I'm in touch with the agency of Ferrari and they're saying, yeah, you can probably post this, no problem with Ferrari. It's just a quiz with a lot of questions about Ferrari. It's a CSV file and those are all buttons. And I consider this interaction design as well, because even if it's just a touch screen, it depends on how you engage the person. No? Let's go on. This is a bit of Ferrari museum. This is one of my favorite projects. I have 5 minutes. I guess this is the last one. Todd's. So this basically was, I was involved since the beginning, so I could at least talk during the concept generation. And we created this mini mapping world for Todd's with RFID system. Their product is basically super personalizable. And I'm just gonna play it so that I cannot put down this volume, so I don't know if you will hear it well. So this is this RFID mapping, a television behind for the sky. So this is all white, and then and this is really nice.
Ciò che We Are Happy ha realizzato per Todd's in collaborazione con lo studio Exhibita è una vera e propria esperienza di acquisto aumentata. Magic Touch Bar è un tech tool per il retail, un'esperienza di mixed reality a tutti gli effetti.
La sfida dal punto di vista artistico è stato
She's the illustrator, amazing that she had this beautiful drawing made by hand, and I was then taking them and importing them in TouchDesigner.
L'obiettivo era quello di promuovere le infinite possibilità di configurazione del mocassino My Gommino, di cui esisteva già un sistema di personalizzazione online. We Are Happy ha voluto restituire un sapore completamente analogico a questo tipo di esperienze.
Can you maybe make a bit quieter, like the video?
Wider?
Or quieter.
Che può essere installato nei luoghi dello shopping, musei, eventi, showroom.
Un'altra sfida dal punto di vista della direction è stato creare un momento magico in cui lo spettatore diventa l'artefice stesso. Attraverso un piccolo gesto può trasformare magicamente lo scenario della città.
Con la tecnica del micromapping abbiamo fatto sì che qualsiasi scelta di personalizzazione e configurazione venisse proiettata in tempo reale all'interno di un mini mondo disegnato ad hoc per questo progetto.
Il progetto è stato interessante fin da subito, unico nel suo genere, molto innovativo. Abbiamo usato una tecnologia che è quella degli RFID.
Questa qua è una capsula, questo è il lettore, guarda lì. Ha fatto beep e ha letto.
La marque Tots, vous pouvez personnaliser vos mocassins, de la personnalisation augmentée.
Tots, so actually they wanted this after the Geek Chic, which is this festival in Paris at Le Bon Marché. Can you hear me? Yeah. They moved this to their best shop in London, Old Bond Street, because they loved it so much. And voila, so I went there, I installed it. Super solid, RFID is so solid, guys. Like I arrived to, and we finished first, no? And all the others were still struggling with all their bullshit stuff that were obviously not calibrating with the light there. And then I moved with my beautiful girlfriend, Elsa Saverosh, who's one of the participants here, from Milan to this little village on the mountain, because we stayed 1 month recluded in a 40-meter square. So as soon as they opened the cages, now we escaped into the village mountain. And here are some my Instagram profile and my profile on the community, where you can actually find a lot of interesting stuff. How much time I have? I have time for the last demonstration. Yes, probably yes. So here you have a lot of my things, like the Alfred room is one of the room I want to push a lot because it's about Alfred room is about animated gesture recognition, and I hope that where the heck is okay. So this is the Kinect view. You can see it from there. And I guess, so this is off, that's on, that's Alfred is turning on. Alfred is basically like the ping pong guy who's doing, it's very mechanical. It's all about, I have 3 paths of research with Kinect, which is the line room, the Ninja Puppet, and the Alfred. So Alfred is all about animated gesture recognition. My next gesture recognition, this is a very simple gesture recognition. So 2 hands, balls, and then you have 2 particles SOP in your hands that they generate when they get near, and you have the forces that are influencing themselves. And obviously, when you separate them, they don't influence themselves. And so this is a little bit of animated. I finished the time. Shit. And there is another logic inside, which is the one of the grid that you, if you go out a certain threshold, you can then lock that Kinect SOP, which is always like, then you know that if Kinect doesn't get it, you are all like with the leg all twisted. So you lock it before it happens that, and you are safe. This is Alfred. This is instead is Kinect points, which is the line room, which is about interactive simple gestures, like for example common object and the behavior that human has with touchless object. So this uses, for example, a bell, and I have to remove this seat here. I don't sit anymore. So camera 2, camera 2, camera 3. This is the one of the dude that I posted on derivative. So you have the bell, which I think it's in the position of the mouse. And then you have this little cord that like does the level invert, no? So this is all about understanding a little bit the simple objects and the common sense of, no, it's a research path again. And then the Ninja Puppet, I'm not gonna show you. I'm just gonna go through my last performance for everyone because I prepared it and I have to do it. It's on the desktop. It's called DMX Fun. And it's basically, maybe I want to sit again because I'm almost fainting. As you all know this, you all know this. And so we're going to do a milkshake like Moses with the Kinect. You're going to see the file. It's going to open. Meanwhile, I put the banana in the milkshake. Oop. No, wait, I have to break it up. Some milk. We have the Kinect entering with the select, can you see it? Hand left, hand right, then a math chop, average, range. Let's add some milk. Et voila, it's pretty simple. I just need to turn on the power in the plug and just show me IV cam, camera 4. That's it. So you all probably know this piece of hardware. Then this is the DSP with the things connected. There, and there's a bit of light show also around, so you can see that the lights are. There's also a light there. And then camera 3. Yeah, we have this amazing milkshake to make, which is hand left, hand right, or hand left, hand right, up. Doesn't work because you have to turn it on. Hello! Et voila, et c'est done. And then you can drink it, obviously. So that's it. Maybe in the breakout room, I'm going to show you also the Octo example. Or if you want to see it now, I just show it now. It's called Tapetino, but it's on camera 2. Camera 2? Right. So that's something I'm doing for Duracell. And I'm using, again, like an Arduino button, which I love. which is this carpet button that you use for safety reason, no? Or for feeding your cat. It's basically a button. It's a sponge with 2 aluminum foil attached to Elegu, sorry, Banzi. And then there is an octo, because I am not Lucas Morgan and I cannot find a way to close a 10C on an Arduino. So octo, it's pretty fast. Look. You just need to jump. And then you have the light going up, no? And then if you don't jump anymore, sorry, I show you it's just a lag chop, huh? It's only a lag chop. It's those, 10 nodes performance. This I got it from Marcus Heckman and that TD Summit. You probably recognize it.
It's really hard to hear you, Nima.
Finished. I'm gonna I finished. Stop.
All right. I'm sort of speechless. That was like so much input at once, and it's absolutely incredible. You're like the master of interactivity and TouchDesigner. It's really, thank you so much for the presentation.